I'm not going to do any fancy PowerPoint slides or anything like that. I'm going to show some working code today. But this is not the developer session. I will try to avoid as much code as possible and show you a way to create these graph connectors, or as they know now as Copilot connectors, in a spec-driven way, that you define the data you want to ingest, and then the tool I'm going to show you will take care of the rest. So, and now we have almost half an hour to look into this, and I could spend many hours on it. But the point is, hey, I'm sorry for you haven't met before. I'm Wictor, former Microsoft MVP, joined Microsoft now 5-6 years ago, and 5 years ago now in May, and been spent last year on building the Copilot connectors for people data, which means that you can bring in information about your people, but bring in information about your employees from your HR system, from your talent management system, from your knowledge system, etc., and bring that into the Microsoft Graph or into Work IQ and enrich the whole Copilot experience and Copilot search and even to the profile card. The intent here is to be able, so you can find the experts, expertise, who knows what, etc., inside your organization. So that's what we're building. And while doing that, of course, I need to test our product. And I spent so many times and so many hours on building out new scaffolding. I use GitHub Copilot, Claude to generate new code, to build these connectors, both for people, but also for content. And eventually I got tired of that and sat down in the evening and said, hey, let's make this easier for me. And also in the conversations I had with customers, helping them building these solutions. I was sitting down with customers, and I want to avoid going directly into code, but hey, let's discuss what's your data corpus. What does your schema look like? What do you have? How does a product description or the metadata about a product look in your organization? Or what data do you have about people, skills, certificates, and whatnot that is talent contextual? So instead, we had the idea that create this TypeSpec driven approach. And TypeSpec it's been out for a while, but it's a way for you in a TypeScript-like fashion, define a schema. So you define the schema and a specification, and you can it has a lot of support attributes that you can give it examples and those kind of things. The intent here is that you describe the schema. So I'll start sharing my screen, and for that I created something I call the Copilot Connector Generator. Essentially, it is two things. It is an addition to TypeSpec to define the Copilot connector specific things. Three things, actually. It's a validator that validates that schema. Did you miss anything? It contains both things you need to have in there, but also recommendations to make your connectors better, so you get better data into the Copilot. If the better data, the better quality of the data, better descriptions of data the Copilot has, the better it can reason over it. I also added support so you ensure that using the preview versus non-preview features and those kind of things. And finally, we added the capability to scaffold out CLI-like kind of experience that you can take, hey, point to CSV file and import that data, point to JSON file, and I'm also going to show you how to do it directly, essentially with REST endpoint. So that's the whole point of this. That you sit down, define your schema. This is the data we want to bring into 365. And then validate that, and then generate code. And you can focus on the important things, such as the integration, which is typically the hard. This schema generation. Sorry about that. It's super annoying here. I'm barking here. Let me just 1 second close the door and get him out of the room. Sorry about that interruption. Short commercial break. But again,
this will never happen. We will cut it away from the recording, so it never happens. So it's okay.
No, exactly. So that's why we have Copilot Connector Generator, and you can paste the link. I was already pasted in the chat. I can see. Thank you for that. There's plenty of documentation in here. We have some end user documentation, how to write the specification. There are some full tutorials if you TypeScript or C#, etc. There are even documentation on how to take this and super easy, put it into natural function if you want to do it, not use the out-the-box CLI experience. So everything should be there for you to get started and get more data into M365, to Copilot, and enrich sort of your end user's experience. And I want to show you some code demos and how to get started. do this how you prefer, right? You can start from scratch, open up a notepad and start writing a TypeSpec. I would recommend that you use VS Code that has all the IntelliSense and all those kind of things for it. And this is a node project, so use npx to run it. But again, to get started, we made it super easy. So you essentially don't have to install anything. You type npx and then the name of the package, which is CocoaGen. And then I typically add latest as well, just to get that latest version of it. And if we run help on that one, we can see what it can do. So we check the version, we download that one, and we have a set of commands here, as I mentioned. We have the init, which is the way to get started super fast. Scaffold, just the basics that you need, so you can start working on that specification. We have the validate that you can run to validate your code. But then we have finally generates, that actually generates all the scaffolding for you. And then we have, in the end, we have an update. If you update your schema or specification, and you can run update to update the schema, update the scaffolded code and everything you have. So let's start with running init here. And I'll run init, and I can show you help for that one as well. What you want here is essentially just, you don't have to type anything by default. You can specify the name of the schema if you want to. You can target either the normal content connectors or people connector specific. We don't do anything with that. We just do the default. And what will happen now? It creates a file here, schema.tsp. It even creates an agents.md. So if you want to use GitHub Copilot or Claude to help you out with this, everything will be in there. I typically run npm install. That will make the VS Code better in autocomplete and these kind of things. And then we just start Visual Studio Code. So I open up in the wrong window. Let's get it over here and zoom in a bit. So what I said, we have a schema file here, and that's the heart of it. So TypeSpec contains a lot of things, but what we're focusing on here is what we call the model for an item. And you can call it whatever you want to. You can call it product, for instance. That is your entity that you want to ingest. I can spell. You want to product. You want to ingest into M365. Then we have these additional Cocoa attributes. I define this is an item, and that corresponds to an external item in Microsoft Graph. I also define the connection up here. So I have a name for the connection. It needs an ID and a description. Description is super important if you're working with the Microsoft 365 Copilot, because that's how we can do the slotting for the language understanding to know which connector to talk to. So that is something you should think about. You can edit that later in the admin experience as well. But the whole intent here is that you essentially define the schema that you want to have. So assume we have an ID, of course, needs to always be there. We need a title for a thing. It's typically a string. We might need a description for a product. We want to have tags for a product, for instance. I'm not just using autocomplete here, so that should probably be a string collection. We also typically need some content. Content URL is probably good to have as well, so we can link back to it, and then the actual content, which is string. So let me just remove the default comments in here. So now we defined our basic schema. Then we need to do the mapping, right? We need to understand that this is a title, and that's done with labels in Copilot Connectors. So I use the Coco label here, and I choose one of these, and I should use title, of course. That's the one. Description, we can add a schema description to that one, which is very good to have. The schema description as well helps out with the Copilot understanding what does this property really mean. Description is fairly obvious, but if there's some internal naming and things you don't understand, that Copilot doesn't understand, could be good to have in there. We need to also, so these are properties, right? We also need to specify, let's do IntelliSense here. We don't need schema description on this one, but we actually need some content as well, which could be the rich product description. For that one, let's add this one called Coco content, which means this with content like that. That will essentially say this is the body of the payload that we're uploading. So with this, we're essentially done. We define our schema, set some things in here. Looks good, right? let's just ensure with this that we do a validation. So I do the validate here, validate. I need to specify the TSP, correct. TSP, schema.tsp, and we'll validate and say, hey, you have the title here with semantic label, and you actually need to add the search attribute to it. And that would tell Copilot and the Microsoft 365 how to index this, etc. And that is required if you have the label title on it. We should probably put the label here, co.label. I think it's called content URL, only URL, sorry. URL. That means as well when it pop up and when you search for it, right, or you get a citation in Copilot, that this is the URL you go to. So that's fine and cool. Let's validate this one more and see that everything is good. Content URL as, okay, that should be retrievable as well. Need to add that one. As you see, the point here that the validation helps you create that schema, so you don't post something to Microsoft Graph or write code and then you get an error once you start writing code, right? You find those errors before. Let's validate again, and we're fine. Now it's valid. So now we define the schema. And now we come to what I think is the secret sauce to this and that is what we call the source mapping. So you probably have this somewhere. You can have it in a CSV file, a YAML file, a JSON file, or something. So what we can do here is do some source mapping. So I can just use this called source here and say, in my source system, this is called external ID, for instance. So I'm going to copy paste this one a couple of times here, and we call it title here. You will see exactly why we do this in just a second. Description. And then we add tags here. Tags, and finally, for this one, the last one, that's URL. I spelled wrong, but ignore that. We call it URL only. Finally, we specify that this one will not have any source. So we say no source, which means that we in our code need to combine that. And that could be, right, you're reading from an external file, you're combining or creating a markdown representation of your item, etc. Let's do a final validation of this one. Yes, it works. Now we come to the fun step here, the generate. And let's take a look at the help for that one first. Same thing here. We have a couple of things. We need to import the TSP part first. That's the schema we want. Second, you need somewhere to put our project to create. Then we can specify which language do we want this in. We can choose between either TypeScript, which make a Node and TypeScript project for you. You can use in .NET, so you get a .NET C# project, or you can actually get REST as well. And if you use REST, it will actually just create all the REST calls you need in order to create the connection, create the schema. So that's perfect if you want to use Insomnia or some REST client to do this kind of thing, or Experiment, or even Graph Explorer will generate all that for you. You can have an optional name. The fun thing is the data format, I think. From that, we can say, hey, generate a sample or generate the project based on a CSV, JSON, YAML, REST, or a custom format. It will also generate a sample file for you for CSV, JSON, and YAML. For REST, we can point it to an OData REST point, and it will take care of that. And for custom, that in that case, you will not do any backend scaffolding for that. Then it's up to you to do that integration to your data warehouse or whatever this is stored. So if we just generate one, we start with the TSP file. TSP is schema. TSP, we do out demo 1. Lang, let's choose TypeScript. That's the default one. And let's start data format. Let's take JSON. And let's run that. So now it's created a project for me, cd demo 1. Just run npm install before we start Visual Studio Code. But what's happened now here is the scaffolded project, a sample file, a couple of files that you can modify. So if you go in and update the schema and run gen or update, you will not overwrite your own code. And that's the whole thing with this. Because what I've seen typically is when you do it, define a schema, but you figure out, hey, I need to add these couple of properties later, or I need to do modifications. So why shouldn't you just keep on using the the same schema file. We also have a copy of the schema file in here that you can run. You can see here it generated a data.json file, just a sample. This is what the system expects from you to see in that in the data source, and this is how the mapping is done. And as you can see, this is based on the source attributes that we put into the TypeSpec. It respects the type, so if you had an integer, for instance, it would be an int or date times and those kind of things. It supports even more complex structures if you want to do that. That is in the documentation, but if you already have a data format with a very complex schema structure of JSON or YAML, etc., you can use JSON path to figure out to point to exactly where it is. In source, it creates a couple of files. It creates a CLI file, and that's how we run it in the demo. It creates a core gallery that essentially contains all the graph things you need to do this thing, some validation stuff. It contains the data source, and that is essentially how it reads the data from the JSON files and converts it. You don't have to modify anything in here. The only place you might want to write some code is in here, right? We've got the model, and that's exactly the model we define in the TypeSpec. We get a schema payload. This is the exact schema that will be sent to Microsoft Graph later, automatically generated from that TypeSpec. So if you update this TypeSpec with additional description on tags here, for instance, that will come into the this file will be updated. We have essentially two files here that does the transformation. This one is the base file, which you shouldn't modify. It contains essentially just reading and parsing the strings. If you added validations, so you can in the source as well add validations that it has to be a certain format on IDs, or it has to be a certain length, or a minimum length, a maximum length, and all those kind of things. But assume you want to do, so let's take the content part here. I'm just gonna copy this file and put it in the override file here, which means that I can override this transform content, and which was the payload. So instead I can say hello M365 community, and I can add whatever logic I want in here. I can parse the title and URLs and get in here. Just save that file. So what we generated here as well is a super simple CLI for you to both create the schema, the connection, the schema, and ingest the data. I'm not going to go through that, but in case because it takes a couple of minutes to set up the schema, it has to be indexed and all those kind of things. But I'm going to show you quickly how we can just npm run the ingest command, which is how you actually take the. Oh, I should probably do that. Let's go back to our data file here and make two of these. Looks better, so we have two of them like that. Now we can go back here. I run the ingest command that we have a dry run, which will actually not write to Microsoft Graph. And let's also output verbose so we see exactly what happens. So what happens here is that this is the exact payload that will be sent to Microsoft Graph that we can see. It creates that external item based on that mapping, reading from that file. So we have sample one, we have sample the first one. And we have three commands. So if I just run npm run here, we have the provision, which will actually provision the connection and the schema. That will take some time, as said. We also have the ingest that I just showed you. So you run provision, wait a minute or two, and then you run ingest. And then this is the CLI format. As I said, there's a super simple way to take out or hook into this and put it in Azure Function instead, so you can have it running in the background, reading from an Azure Blob Store, whatever you have stored your data. So that's the first demo. The second thing I wanted to show you, which I think is pretty cool, let's go back to our root here, to the first project, and let's make a copy of this schema. Like this, paste, and let's call it her name, North Wind Products. So let's use a classical Northwind database. So I have it up here. So this is a Northwind database. It's a sample database, and you can see here it's an OData demo essentially. So we have products in here. I should probably zoom in a bit. So we have the first product. We have product ID, product name, supplier, category, etc. So what I could do essentially is I take this definition. Let's scrap just the middle here and do it over again. We have a product ID, which is a string. We have a product name string, and then we offset this as the Coco ID like that, and then we set the Coco.source. I'm going to show you product ID. We just take product name and product name as well. Coco.source, product name, Coco. What did I forget? We should have label here. Label, title, and then we need that one as well. Doing it super simple, right? I could take whatever things. I'm going to show you the real version of this one. But the whole point here, in this case, I mapped to the exact names in our Northwind database here. So these are products in that product catalog. I can add whatever I want in there. And instead, let's do like this. So we had the generate before. Let's take a look at the generate help command. So instead of specifying that we getting this from a JSON file, we will actually put REST in here. So we should be able to do that. TSP, that was Northwind products, out demo2, lang, let's do .NET because it's fun, and then data for format REST. I think that's it. Let's see what happens. See the demo2 code, and we should have exactly the same looking project, but now with .NET and C#. You recognize the things here. We have the data source. We have the content connector, which with the model here. Now we only have product name, ID and product name. We have the property transform, etc. that we can override. What I can do in here in app settings, we have the base URL. So let's copy this base URL, put in here like that, and then we can go and run. Let's see what's that. .NET run ingest dry run verbose. Hope everything works. So it's just compiling. Will take a few seconds, and now it went very fast, right? But it ingested 77 items. So you can see the products here actually coming from that file exactly. And if you take a look at this one, the Northwind here, this is actually only showing 20 or so items at the time. But since this is OData, it has an OData next link. So the backend takes care of that and iterates it as it should in here, right? So now I didn't write a single line of code except the spec, but I'm integrated to an OData service, getting everything from there, which makes it super easy to get up and running. Of course, there's no auth piece in here, so if you need the auth, you can just hook into that. That's fairly easy. And I actually did this before with a little bit more data, so I'm going to show you in Admin Center that we have under Copilot Connectors. We do have our Northwind products. It's synced. I had a description here, contains product from the Northwind database. We have 74 items in there. There's actually 3 that do fail due to the naming. I didn't do proper encoding of the name, so that's why it's not 77. And if I go into Copilot, I can say, what are the Northwind products with Cajun? See if this works. I haven't tried it before. Cajun flavor. See if that works. And we actually got it here. So Chef Anton's Cajun seasoning from Northwind products from that database in here. I didn't provide a link when I did this one, but essentially you could provide a link back to the source system and these kind of things. It works the same with that was actually in search. I should have probably done that in Copilot chat instead. Can do the same thing here. Let's try it in chat. And we should hopefully get the same answer. You never know with LLMs, right? But we got it here. We even got the category, we got the packaging, the source for it. We have the citation here properly if I add in a URL. So that's essentially what I made, because I made, I don't know, close to 100 different connectors over the last few months. Made it spec driven. I focus on the spec and do the formatting of the shape and data. And then in many cases, just use the JSON source format and generate that. That is super easy to do. Or a CSV file, which is very common when I talk to customers. They have data in a CSV file. They want to bring that in. So that's the whole idea with the CocoGen. And feel free to contribute to the project if you want to. Again, Bessa alluded to in the beginning, this is not a Microsoft product, but this is something we built for us in engineering to make it easier for us to scaffold out projects and test our products and help you get data into M365. So Copilot, your agents, of course, this can be used by agents in Copilot Studio. You can use only specific connectors, but essentially make all end users of Copilot, their experience much better and rich of data.